And so for me, I've stopped doing that and using that as a moment to breathe.
There is actually something, when you pick up the phone, what actually happens in your body is that there is a little excitement. Maybe I get some email, maybe I got some like to my Facebook, whatever. And so the moment you pick up the phone, there is a rush, a small rush of excitement in the body. And actually, this is what makes it so addictive. Mm-hmm. People are addicted not actually to the phone. People are addicted to the small rushes of excitement that they can get dozens of times a day every time they pick up the phone to see what's there.
Yeah, and those pleasure centers keep decreasing.
Yeah, so we have to do it again and again.
We have to accelerate to keep up because that pleasure center is depleting every time. And I think that's what we don't realize is that the more you do it, the harder it becomes to experience that feeling again.
Yeah.
Because you've just dropped it lower and lower and lower. Amazing. Okay, we started the boredom movement. Today, on this day, 26th April, 2019, Yuval and Jay, the boredom movement, the boredom podcast. Okay, the second thing I really wanted to dive into, apart from happiness with you, which leads nicely to this, because I think this boredom experience also slightly links to what I wanted to go to, which is education. You speak a lot about education. I've made a ton of videos about education and the education system and my challenges to it. Just yesterday, I was talking to people about how, like, when we were educated, we were taught to believe we had to be good at everything. We were taught that you had to get an average grade at this and an average grade at that and an average grade at that. And you had to be equally good at history and science and math and English. And a lot of the videos that I've made on these topics have been shared a lot. So one of the videos I made on this topic has 367 million views on one video. It's been shared like 8 million times or something crazy like that. And it's because we feel this pressure through our education. Now, I believe that the ideal education system should have a head, a heart, and a hand. A head for critical thinking, a heart to understand, to experience, and then a hand to give, to serve, to make a difference. And you talk in your chapter about the 4 C's of critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity.
Yeah, that's not my idea. Yeah. And it's like the experts in the field, they're increasingly talking about these 4 C's.
Absolutely. So tell me about your thoughts on the education system and why you got fascinated with that and how you think that's impacted some of our mistakes we make now.
My interest with the education system comes, I am in the education system. I'm a professor at the university, so it's part of my life. But now it's mostly from thinking about the coming revolutions, especially in the job market, that, again, we're in a unique situation in human history when for the first time we have no idea how the job market would look like in 20 or 30 years. That was never before the case in history. There are always things you couldn't predict about the world 30 years from now. Political revolutions, wars, plagues, economic crisis, nobody could ever predict that. But at least about the basic skills that humans will need in 30 years in order to get a good job and in order to support themselves and get along in life, we always had quite a good understanding of that. So if you lived 1,000 years ago in the Middle Ages in some small village, and so people didn't know who would be the king in 30 years. People didn't know there might be a plague or an earthquake, who knows. But they knew what they needed to teach their kids if they were to have a reasonable life. In 30 years, you need to know how to plant rice and how to take the goats herding and how to make cheese and how to make bread and how to build a house and all these. And today, we just have no idea what skills people will need in the job market in 2050. Anybody who tells you, I know how the job market would look like in 2050 and what skills will be needed is deluding either you or also themselves. The only thing we know is that it will be a completely different job market because of the amazing advances in AI and machine learning and also in bioengineering. So more and more jobs will be replaced by machines and computers and robots. Some jobs will be transformed and new jobs will appear. Now, I don't think we are facing a situation, no more jobs in the world. There will be new jobs. The big question is actually 2 big questions. One big question is about training and retraining. There will be new jobs. Will people have the skills necessary for these kinds of jobs. Previously, when machines replaced humans, for instance in agriculture, so machines replaced humans in low-skilled jobs in farms, but a lot of new low-skilled jobs were created in factories, like the tractor replaced you on the farm, so you moved to Detroit to work in Ford's corporation to build a tractor. And the new job was usually a relatively low-skilled job, so within a couple of weeks, perhaps 2-3 months, you could transform a farm worker into a worker in a tractor factory. But today, when you look to the future, so people say, yes, there will not be any more jobs for truck drivers because you have self-driving trucks, and there will not be a lot of jobs for people producing shirts in textile factories and things like that, but there will be new jobs in the creative industries, whether in art or whether in science or in interacting with people. But the problem is these new kind of jobs will require high skills. So it won't be so easy to take an unemployed textile worker at age 40 and transform her into a software engineer that creates virtual reality games. And what makes it even worse is the huge gap between different countries. I think that in a country like the US, which is bound to reap much of the benefits of the coming AI revolution, because California, along with China, is one of the centers of this revolution, there will be immense new wealth created, at least in some parts of the United States. So I don't worry for the Americans. But when I look at other parts of the world, countries which depend almost entirely on cheap manual labor, let's say just south of the border, you go to Mexico, you go to El Salvador, to Honduras, to South America, what will happen there? I mean, we are not educating the young people today in Honduras or in Colombia to be software engineers. So even if there are a lot of new jobs in California for software engineers, this is not going to help the kids who are growing up today in Honduras or Colombia. So what will they do? And we have no answer. And that's actually my biggest worry about the education system now, is from a global perspective, the huge gap that is opening between different countries in the face of the coming AI revolution.
If you were in charge of the education system south of the border, what were the things you'd be thinking about at least?
I need money.
Okay, but if you had the money, what would you be thinking about? Because money is never an issue, really.
North of the border, even north of the border, it's an issue. But south of the border, it's, you go to Brazil, and we are just going to Brazil in a few months. And you have people coming to Brazil with all these ideas about, we should teach kids this, and we should teach the kids that. And the local people come and say, we don't even have schools. I mean, where do you want us to put the kids?
In that sense, money.
In some places, you have the schools run in a shift system. Like, because you just don't have the facilities. So some kids learn from 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. They go home, another shifts come. Another shifts come at night because they just don't. And, this is... some things you can't just throw money at. You need more than that. But the basic infrastructure, basically the first thing you need is money.
Okay. So looking at it from that perspective, my hope is that there are people who believe in those communities and want to invest in them.